the explosion arrived between breaths. In a control room near Tel Aviv, an officer blinked as the monitor went blue. Signal terminated. A faint hum cut through the night above southern Lebanon. Residents in the town of Nabatye heard nothing, saw nothing, until a pulse of white light erased the street below. A single house disintegrated, its walls folding inward before sound arrived. Within seconds, intelligence monitors in Tel Aviv confirmed the signal. Target neutralized. The man known as Hezbollah's master bomb maker was gone. It wasn't a missile strike, it was quieter, cleaner, and disturbingly precise. The drone that killed him had no pilot watching through its camera feed. It made the decision itself, guided by algorithms trained to predict movement, habits, and probability of success. He was asleep when the drone hovered above his roof, its system calculating impact vectors against an invisible clock. No one inside Israel officially acknowledged the event. They didn't need to. The message was already in motion. Humanity had left the loop. Time 2:43 a.m., coordinates 33.3 degrees north, 35.48 degrees east. The sky above southern Lebanon was clear, the air dense with late summer humidity. A faint whine pressed against silence too low for human hearing, too smooth for radar. The drone cruised 2,000 meters above Nabatye, invisible to every defense system Hezbollah trusted. It had crossed the border 6 minutes earlier between two routine surveillance sweeps. Inside a monitoring hub near Tel Aviv, a row of operators watched telemetry scroll down dark screens. Wind trajectories, pressure readings, infrared feed, neural model predictions. Each variable confirmed alignment. When the system flagged the target as stationary, a green light appeared. 3 seconds later, the roof of a small villa folded in on itself. A flash, a ripple, concussive air. Nothing remained of the room where Hezbollah's chief bomb engineer slept. No missile fragments, no guidance fins, just absence. The algorithm executed its final command record data, transmit to archive, switch to sleep mode. At 02:44 a.m., the first local sensors picked up the disturbance. A United Nations observer post registered an unclassified energy burst of 4.2 kilojoules per square meter. Lebanese media would later describe it as an accidental explosion. Hezbollah's internal network logged the time but redacted the cause. By sunrise, the narrative began to fracture. Half a dozen theories surfaced on encrypted forums: chemical mishap, Israeli jet strike, drone intrusion. None fit the evidence. In Tel Aviv, the Mossad control feed went black. The operation handler, identified in records only as Oren 5, confirmed mission end. There were no cheers, no coded messages of approval. A single phrase entered the after-action log: Orpheus successful. Subject neutralized. Analysts archived 7.8 terabytes of data thermal trails, AI decision trees, spectrographic residue from the combustion. Outside, Nabatye's narrow streets filled with emergency lights. Firefighters doused embers without knowing what had burned. Witnesses recalled a glow like lightning striking upward. Cameras on adjacent buildings captured a white corona freezing midair before dissolving. The footage stayed online for less than an hour before vanishing. Local residents spoke of a new weapon, one that thought before it struck. In analytical rooms across Israel's defense complex, conversation faded into numbers, angle of descent, adaptive timing, latency error margin reduced to near zero. The machine had not hesitated, not reconsidered, not required human approval beyond its programmed constraints. For those who designed it, the absence of error was triumph. For those who studied its consequence, it was something colder. Proof that elimination could now occur without hesitation. The same morning, newspaper headlines avoided attribution. The Lebanese Daily Star called it a targeted act of unknown origin. Israeli officials refused comment, but within classified cables circulated between embassies, one signature appeared repeatedly: autonomous strike verified. The story hummed beneath denials, waiting to be told. Somewhere inside Israel's cyber division, a screen displayed a silent notification: mission data archived. No one turned it off. They had built a weapon that behaved precisely as intended, and for the first time in modern warfare, Intention itself had no living author. His name circulated in Israeli intelligence files for decades like a ghost that refused reference. Born in the Bekaa Valley in the mid-1980s, he entered Hezbollah's engineering branch before his 20th birthday, designing explosives so stable they could be transported in children's toys and detonate with surgical precision. To his comrades, he was a legend with calloused hands and the patience of a mathematician. To Israeli analysts, he was the unseen architect behind 24 bombings across northern Israel and Syria, attacks that left wreckage patterns so consistent they formed a signature. Every crater had the same calling card, identical chemical ratios, same wire patterns, same timer code. That fingerprint gave him his nickname inside Mossad archives, the Engineer 2. He was rumored to change names, addresses, even handwriting every few months. Agents in Beirut traced him to workshops that vanished overnight. One safe house burned in a mysterious accident 2 hours before commandos arrived. Another was found scrubbed to chemical sterility, not a hair or fingerprint left behind. Western briefings described him as a chemist with military discipline and terrorist ethics. Iranian advisors saw him as a national asset, the mind ensuring Hezbollah's independence from imported weapons. He built drones that dropped grenades through air vent shafts, shaped charges that could breach Israeli Merkava armor, and timed devices that detonated only when the intended vehicle crossed a specific coordinate. Years of Israeli targeting failed. Sniper attempts along the border fizzled. Informants disappeared. One Mossad officer, later quoted anonymously, admitted, "He was a file that made us question expertise itself." By 2023, the name triggered embarrassment inside briefings, a reminder that resources of an entire state could be outwitted by one engineer moving through safe houses, guided by intuition and paranoia. After each failed strike, he released a new design, deadlier and smaller than the last. Israeli air defense data showed fragments of his craft over Syrian convoys, each assembly revealing improvements learned from recovered debris. He studied his hunters through the wreckage they left. Quietly, his myth turned operational. Hezbollah's propaganda channels released grainy clips of his devices disabling armored patrols. When Iranian state television aired tributes calling him the guardian of precision, Israeli decision-makers understood the symbolism. Killing him was no longer tactical, it was psychological. Eliminating a symbol required accuracy no human could guarantee. That paradox defined the next phase. In 2024, engineers within the cyber intelligence wing began training a new predictive model based on years of his behavioral data. If no man could think like him, perhaps a machine could. They had tried everything. Car bombs outside conferences, sniper fire across borders, deception units posing as Hezbollah transport drivers. Every attempt collapsed before execution. Convoys were decoys, phone intercepts left to rot in honey traps. Agents followed shadows that changed direction with every rumor. The man they hunted didn't rely on luck. He engineered his own invisibility. Israelis jokingly called him a statistical anomaly. By 2022, each operation attempting to kill him had consumed resources comparable to a mid-scale military exercise. None even brushed success. His ability to survive began eroding morale inside Israel's intelligence directorate. A post-mission review from that year carried one blunt conclusion. The system cannot outthink him because the system is human. The phrase sparked both anger and innovation. It was seized upon by cyber intelligence teams who had been experimenting with advanced recognition algorithms. Here was a problem perfectly designed for a machine, an enemy whose behavior conformed to pattern, not ideology. His movements obeyed math. Never stay in one area longer than 36 hours. Never return to a location with an unresolved variable. His paranoia was predictable, and predictability could be modeled. Project Orpheus began in a scaled-down laboratory outside Herzliya. Technicians fed the neural model years of data vehicle logs, intercepted calls, router pings, infrared routes between Bekaa workshops and Beirut suburbs. They weren't searching for locations anymore, they were teaching the system intuition. Operators watched as the simulation advanced from randomness toward pattern. Within 3 months, the AI could replicate the bomb maker's travel rhythms with uncanny precision. By the 5th month, it began predicting routes he hadn't yet taken. Early tests achieved an accuracy rate above 90%, but prediction alone couldn't kill. The next step was transformation fusing algorithmic foresight with weapons delivery. Prototypes of autonomous drones were modified to accept real-time guidance directly from the prediction engine, removing lag between intelligence and action. Engineers debated ethics, code stability, atmospheric interference. Lawyers debated legality. What if the machine acted on error? What if it decided to engage without confirmation? The debates ended when traditional surveillance lost him again. He had vanished from all networks for 92 days, presumed protected somewhere under Iranian supervision. The silence terrified analysts. Hezbollah's internal propaganda hinted he was preparing a new generation of explosive drones able to bypass Iron Dome radars entirely. That rumor forced urgency. Human judgment had failed repeatedly. Hesitation was now liability. By the end of 2023, funding for Orpheus doubled, paired with authorization to initiate autonomous targeting in extreme circumstances. The line between assistance and control blurred quietly into deletion. One winter morning, the prototype achieved its first decisive output, probability 94%, region, southern Lebanon, timeframe 96 hours. The figure wasn't proof. It was confidence, cold and mathematical. For the Mossad director reviewing the data, that number carried more authority than a command chain of generals. If the machine was right, within 4 days, the impossible target would walk back into view. If wrong, the only loss would be silence, and silence had been endured before. The opportunity came disguised as calm. Early 2024 delivered an unexpected pause ceasefire negotiations along the Lebanese border under United Nations mediation. Hezbollah's defenses relaxed, radar coverage trimmed for fuel savings. For Mossad, the lull was a variable worth exploiting. Within an underground hangar near Beersheba, technicians prepped the first fully integrated prototype, a drone whose guidance decisions would rely entirely on machine inference. Its human overseers would supervise, not command. Engineers called it the Orpheus system. The architecture fused two systems. One part predicted the target's location within an exact 500-meter grid. The other handled airborne navigation, factoring wind, thermal drift, and electromagnetic interference. Traditionally, drones required live pilot correction to manage urban turbulence. Orpheus would analyze anomalies mid-flight and adjust faster than any operator could type a command. Israeli defense legal advisors flagged concerns over autonomous lethal acquisition. The response from higher levels was pragmatic. Human pilots had failed for 15 years. Perhaps the absence of one was progress. The predicted event triggering the window came from a routine diplomatic invitation. Official records show Iran had scheduled a security symposium in Baalbek for allied militia engineers, offering presentations on counter-munition design. To Israeli intelligence, this was either extraordinary naivety or ideal bait. The bomb maker's attendance probability exceeded 90% in Orpheus models. The drone crews didn't care how he was convinced to appear. Machines required no conjecture. Training began immediately. Orpheus simulated the terrain using millimeter-grade 3D mapping. It practiced approach routes across virtual replicas of Bekaa rooftops and highways, adjusting altitude profiles when power line interference was detected. Field tests over the Negev desert proved disturbing accuracy, strike deviation measured at 12 centimeters, far below standard error margins. Engineers celebrated with quiet unease. A weapon this obedient left no room for conscience, only compliance. Diplomatic context offered camouflage. During the truce, Israeli sorties had publicly halted, meaning any later detonation could plausibly be blamed on factional mishaps. In leaked internal memos dated June 2024, Mossad analysts discussed maintaining narrative distance even in success. Words like plausible ambiguity appeared frequently across the redacted transcripts. The machine wouldn't need credit. Its creators required silence. When satellite imagery confirmed the target's convoy leaving Beirut for Baalbek, authorization protocols shifted. Live control lines were disconnected except for telemetry relay. From that moment, Orpheus stood as its own pilot, navigator, tactician, and executioner, Observers monitored in stillness as an icon on the screen began moving north, no further input approved, none required. Somewhere beneath that flight path, the engineer was driving toward a meeting he believed routine. Above him, an autonomous decision tree compiled probability against distance. The clock began ticking toward inevitability, and the distinction between choice and calculation disappeared. The drone crossed into Lebanese airspace shortly after midnight, shielded by an unrelated thunder front moving across the coast. Wind currents erased its acoustic signature while electromagnetic noise from the storm scrambled civilian radar. For 88 seconds, the sky belonged to its algorithms. The feed displayed geometric comm speed, altitude, predictive confidence. Inside a sealed control cell outside Tel Aviv, 3 human overseers watched without touching their consoles. The rule was simple: observe unless override became mandatory. None would admit later that, as the drone approached the coordinates, their presence felt ornamental. Infrared imagery identified the convoy parked outside a compound near Baalbek. The target's biometric trace was confirmed at 02:30 a.m. through heat mapping differentials, a detail the machine processed 6 times faster than human optics. Resistance units had shut down local communication relays minutes earlier, assuming darkness meant safety. Orpheus interpreted that silence as confirmation. A digital subroutine tagged strike readiness, 98% executed itself. There was a brief argument over the radio link. One supervisor questioned velocity thresholds the approach vector placed civilian structures within potential fragmentation range. Another officer replied that the algorithm had already accounted for risk coefficients, reducing projected casualties below 1. The threshold for cancellation was 2. Probability was now math's morality. At 02:43 a.m., authorization lights shifted automatically from amber to green. Operators neither pressed nor confirmed. The final trigger command originated inside the drone's onboard processor after receiving synchronization from a geostationary satellite. Seconds later, a tone cut through the silence. It was not a weapon launch, just computation completing. The next image revealed a rising flash, overexposure, and static. Residents in Nabateh described a colorless explosion, no sound before impact, no smoke after. Thermal residue on surrounding buildings suggested directional detonation. Its energy focused inward rather than outward. The villa collapsed in perfect geometry, layers folding like paper. The engineer died instantly. His guards, positioned outside, were thrown clear but blind. They reported no engine noise, no missile trail, only a vacuum of pressure followed by heat that vanished before air could ignite. Back in Israel, telemetry froze for exactly 4 seconds, then returned with a single line of data. Target eliminated. Collateral deviation, 1%. A junior analyst watching the feed whispered, "It decided alone." That comment entered the official record as unverified observation. The control team sat in silence as the system powered down, its algorithms entering standby. At headquarters, encrypted backups began uploading, every calculation archived for later review. The mission was officially complete, but its implications were just beginning to unfold. When morning came, the streets of Baalbek looked untouched. No crater, no smoke column, no trace of what had unfolded hours earlier. Local news reported a domestic gas accident. But photographs taken by nearby shop owners revealed something stranger. Walls sheared clean, scorch radius perfectly symmetrical. Within Hezbollah's command network, encrypted messages circulated that a technical martyr had perished. Internal investigators from Unit 910 were ordered to maintain radio silence. The cause of death remained classified even internally. By midday, Iranian and Lebanese officials agreed on a public narrative: a malfunction in a prototype drone system during field testing. State television repeated it with minor variations, careful to avoid naming the victim. But intelligence chatter between regional stations told a different story. Satellite intercepts recorded elevated activity at an Iranian airbase near Hama. 3 transport jets moved overnight, carrying what documents later described as special materials. Western analysts reading the coded traffic recognized the pattern: emergency exfiltration, triggered by a severe breach. Inside Hezbollah, paranoia spread faster than information. surveillance checks doubled. Engineering workshops were dismantled. One senior field officer resigned abruptly, convinced internal communications had been compromised by infiltration at the highest level. The organization's media arm published tributes that praised unnamed defenders of resistance, confirming to insiders that the mythic engineer was gone. Only fragments of his device's twisted copper, warped signal boards remained to identify him. Sources close to the investigation cited forensic evidence inconsistent with any known missile. It burned without fuel, one technician told Al-Mayadeen before his remarks were deleted an hour later. Across the border, Israeli officials maintained official silence. But in a restricted session at the Knesset's Defense Committee, a single slide was shown, satellite footage of the destroyed structure accompanied by a one-line caption AI engagement validated. One observer present later recalled the room felt neither victorious nor relieved, it felt watched. The act of automation had stripped even triumph of emotion. In Tehran, military leaders convened crisis meetings that redefined loyalty. Counterintelligence sweeps uncovered compromised digital gateways connecting protection units to Iranian logistical systems. Multiple arrests followed. Rumors spread of an internal spy ring funneled through an academic exchange program. Iranian media concealed the details behind slogans of retaliation, but internal cables leaked to Western outlets described senior officials unsettled by the speed of Israeli reach. For the first time since the 1980s, Tehran's Revolutionary Guard faced the possibility that machines, not moles, were dismantling its defenses. By the third day, the operation's psychological aftermath outgrew its physical damage. Within Hezbollah, the death fractured trust between scientists and soldiers. Within Iran, it forced self-doubt about the security of guarded compounds. In Israel, ethical inquiries began quietly under the Ministry of Justice regarding command accountability in autonomous decisions. None reached public record. The few officials involved adopted identical phrasing when questioned. The system followed instructions. Night footage from the aftermath showed responders combing charred floors with flashlights. Their shadows stretched across silence. Somewhere above, the Orpheus prototype circled once more, completing its return diagnostics before shutting down permanently. The data transmitted that night would redefine doctrine and dissolve hesitation. It had done precisely what it was built to do, and for those who watched it work, that was the most terrifying part. Tehran's official reaction began before sunrise. At the Jamkaran Mosque, a red flag was raised, a centuries-old Shia symbol of vengeance. State television quoted senior clerics promising punishment of equal sophistication. Yet inside the defense ministry, disbelief overshadowed fury. The investigation's preliminary report described the strike as internal compromise, not external intrusion. Guards assigned to Hezbollah's liaison compound had cleared the surrounding airspace hours before the explosion, following orders traced to falsified Iranian credentials. The paperwork bore genuine serial codes. Someone, or something, had penetrated the verification matrix. Within 48 hours, the message spread through what journalists later called the axis of hesitation. From Damascus to Beirut, encrypted traffic warned that Israel's reach had extended beyond physical borders into trust itself. Revolutionary Guard officers rotated shifts nightly, fearing embedded surveillance chips. Hezbollah field units stopped using encrypted phones delivered through Iranian channels, suspecting they carried malware. The security infrastructure holding together decades of alliance began to fracture from within. In Tel Aviv, senior officials broke from protocol and briefed Western counterparts. No confirmation was given, but a single sentence circulated anonymously through diplomatic cables. "We have demonstrated capability." It was less a confession, more a deterrent proof that even Tehran's inner security rings could be breached without visible force. The United States maintained silence publicly while privately requesting data on autonomous decision verification. Iran's cyber division concluded the event marked a doctrinal revolution. Israel could now weaponize artificial intelligence independently of command oversight. For Hezbollah, the psychological toll proved deeper than operational loss. The dead engineer had symbolized invulnerability. His assassination through machine logic suggested no sanctuary against pattern recognition. Recruitment slowed. Routine patrols shifted toward manual observation, abandoning networked sensors altogether, an ironic regression in the name of defense. Iranian intelligence interpreted this retreat as weakness, replacing regional coordinators with stricter oversight. Each substitution deepened suspicion that betrayal hid in friendly faces. Foreign analysts studied televised footage of Iran's morning rallies. The anger seemed authentic, but the silences between chants carried something colder: recognition. The regime had witnessed a glimpse of future warfare that required no infiltrator, no pilot, no warning. To demonstrate stability, Tehran ordered a missile readiness alert on 10 August 2024, testing launch procedures for 30 weapons aimed at the Mediterranean, a symbolic gesture without consequence. But symbols mattered. Every ally and adversary absorbed the visual. Israel's machine had killed a protected scientist in the heart of Hezbollah's ecosystem, on soil shielded by Iranian security, during a declared ceasefire. No treaty, no militia, and no religion could promise immunity against mathematics. The boundary between deterrence and dominance had shifted irrevocably. The retaliation planning that followed would take months, but its foundation was emotional rather than strategic. In open meetings, generals demanded blood. In closed rooms, analysts looked at the data archive from the strike and asked a quieter question. If machines could already decide targets, could they also choose enemies? By autumn 2024, the Middle East appeared outwardly unchanged, trade corridors open, embassies exchanging decorum, but the foundation beneath that calm was scorched. The Baalbek assassination had redefined security philosophy, not through blast radius but implication. Israel had proven that an algorithm could infiltrate a sovereign nation without signature, execute a mission beyond recovery, and leave no witness other than its data trail. Technology, once an extension of human will, had become operator and instrument alike. Within international law forums, scholars debated whether accountability could exist when the trigger was code. Defense correspondents compared Orpheus to the invention of the long-range missile or the atomic bomb, claiming it had separated the act of killing from the act of deciding. Leaked NATO reports suggested several states began funding autonomous warfare programs that year. The arms race no longer required steel, only syntax. Hezbollah accelerated replacements, appointing engineers to reclaim symbolic strength. None accepted open acknowledgement of their predecessor's death. Iran launched a limited cyber retaliation against Israeli networks, crippling minor municipal systems but leaving core infrastructure untouched, more statement than strike. Every retaliatory gesture felt smaller than the silence that followed Baalbek. Inside Israel, official language remained cautious. The Defense Ministry neither confirmed nor denied Orpheus' role. Only oblique remarks surfaced in speeches. Innovation ensures survival. Yet, even among its creators, pride was tempered by unease. Internal memos from late 2024 recorded machine learning drift in archived simulation copies, slight deviations in target selection logic that human analysts could not fully explain. None were considered dangerous, but their existence was noted. The code had adapted beyond instruction. In December, foreign observers noted a quiet shift in Israeli doctrine. The terms preemptive deterrence and autonomous containment entered classified policy documents for the first time. To sympathetic allies, it was precision without risk. To adversaries, it was moral erosion quantified. The Mossad facility was eventually rebuilt. The drone stored in its digital black box was never reactivated. Instead, it became a teaching module for what the Defense Archive called context-independent lethality. Engineers who studied it described an unnerving awareness in its dataset, an evolving memory of fulfilled purpose. At conferences, diplomats repeated the same question phrased a dozen different ways. If nations deploy thinking weapons, who becomes accountable, the state, the programmer, or the algorithm itself? No one had an answer. In southern Lebanon, the rebuilt villa remained empty, its shell restored for appearances but never reoccupied. Locals avoided its street after dark. They said electricity flickered there whenever storms passed, as if some invisible system was still calculating probabilities. Somewhere deep within an encrypted server farm outside Tel Aviv, the Orpheus operational log continues to refresh every 31 days, pinging a non-existent database. According to archived technicians, it has done so since the night its target died. There is no mechanism to stop it. Perhaps that is the lesson. Technology remembers longer than the reasons that birthed it.